Well, hi guys. I'm here on Sunday night, ready to move into week three after kind of a disjointed week two. We really had some interesting circumstances with the snowfall and the power outages, and here in Connecticut, I think many of you probably uh, got at least a little taste of what was going on. So you'll notice we had that announcement put up that the class was canceled. Kind of hard. How do you cancel an online class? And to your credit, a lot of you just ignored it and kept posting away and discussing the issues for week three, and I mean, week two, and I really appreciate that. So what I'm going to do is, if you did the work for week two, which was primarily discussion board, obviously you're going to get full credit for it in a normal time frame. If you were unable to access Blackboard and unable to get to the week two material, I'd like you to back up and see if you can participate in it. I leave discussion boards up and open anyway because I know people like to refer back to them and see what's been going on. And the discussion board in this class has been pretty lively. I like what people are doing. So if you were unable to get to the discussion board last week, I'm not going to grade it till at least for those of you who did participate through tonight, probably at least through midweek. If you didn't get on this week, please try to see if you can back up and participate in last week's discussion because it's a pretty good one. When we started to talk about whether teams need to concentrate on, really, I said making a profit, but are you concentrating on being a business or being a sports team? And I think people put in a lot of interesting answers. So I'm going to talk about that for a second, then move into where we're going to go with week three. So really, once again, discussion board is really important this week. Pick up from where you left off last week, get into it, and I'm not seeing a lot of people having a lot of trouble getting in early, which is great. And hopefully all the technical problems are behind us now. So let me just comment a few things that I did see in week two in the discussion so far. Really interesting debate going on in a couple of places. Some people felt it was more important than some others, but most of you felt really strongly, I can see, that it's that team's responsibility as a business to make money. And what I think we haven't quite seen yet, it doesn't really come up until you start seeing the factors that are at play in week three, and then week 4 and 5 in particular. You'll start to see why some of the things that you were talking about happen. But you'll notice we talked about start now making distinctions between big market teams, small market teams. Text really mentions how frequently a small market team can be more profitable than a big market team. How that the Yankees, for instance, aren't the most profitable team in baseball. They've got the most money, but they're not the most profitable. We're going to see some of those mechanisms in a couple of weeks. But most of you are very, very convinced that the health of the franchise, the health of the business is what's important. And pretty much that's true, right? Because without a healthy business, there's no entertainment product to put on the field. And it will be not this week, but next when we'll start to see the effects of competitive balance, which is a kind of a fun topic, but it's got so many economic implications as well as real, truly athletic competitive balance implications that you're going to want to be waiting for that. Now, I'm also happy to see that people are thinking about how the different sports might have some different characteristics. And also, I noticed in the last few days or two, actually maybe just some things that popped up today since yesterday, some people have started mentioning European soccer leagues and how they might be a little different and what are the considerations there. And the globalization of sport, I think you're going to see tremendous similarities and some not so subtle differences, though. For instance, in this week's material, in week 4, and I'm going to transition into that right now, we start talking about some really, really technical, legal, economic concepts. So if you go through chapter 4 is the material for this week. you're going to see it starts talking about monopoly. Now remember what monopoly is from your early economics lessons. Monopoly is the concept of one seller. One seller of a product, many buyers. Okay? And we're also going to talk about the concept of monopsony, which is kind of like monopoly stood on its head, and monopsony is the concept of one buyer from many, many sellers. Monopsony comes into place when we're talking about the acquisition of players. Monopoly obviously is the provision of the product. Monopoly is why there are leagues. And I'm going to ask us to do a little discussion on that. You're going to find some very interesting historical notes in Chapter 4 about how leagues were formed and how leagues operate. Why were they formed? What do they do? This is all clearly very important for how the modern day world of sports is structured. You'll also see there's another video of my sitting there in a bright green post tennis shirt talking to you about some generic things, and I make reference to the NFL labor situation. That's because I shot that video in the spring, and I talked about the union decertification then. I'm going to leave that in there because just substitute the word or letters NBA for NFL, and we're right about at that point. The NBA situation is coming right to a head this week. There's an ultimatum on the table, I see, where the league has essentially said to the players, you got till Wednesday to take or leave our deal. And players are now talking about decertifying their union. One of the things that would allow them to do is to file antitrust suits against the NBA, the league. Very, very technical, but very interesting stuff. So I don't expect everybody to really tear apart all the charts and graphs and economic analyses, but I think what I really would like us to do is concentrate on what does this mean for the structure of our sports? What does this mean for how our sports are managed? What does it mean for what rules go into place in those sports? And I'm talking about business rules. Those are going to be very, very important for us. Very interesting discussion so far this week, though, and I would like everybody to keep it up. So that's where we're headed. Sorry about the confusion. Sorry if anybody's just finally getting their power back now. I was pretty lucky this week. Was able to actually make a recruiting trip last Sunday in the middle of the storm and see several good tennis recruits. So the business of my participation in Division II sports went right along. Didn't skip a beat. Then we had some interesting adventures on the drive back from New York, but that's not a subject for here. But just to show you how interested people are in making things go, that was an event run by the United States Tennis Association, and they didn't cancel it in the Nor'easter, and we went. And a lot of people have a lot of things going on in their lives, and sport is one of them. And you'll notice towards the end of Chapter 4, we start talking about the NCAA. And the NCAA, you're going to find, is one of the most interesting organizations that you can imagine. We read about it in the newspapers all the time. We read about conference realignment and suddenly realize that the NCAA really doesn't have anything to do with that. We read about the BCS, and the NCAA really doesn't have anything to do with that. But the NCAA regulates so much of what we do in sport, and it affects things both at the amateur and to some degree with feeding up into the professional level. So that's kind of where we stand. I really want to, again, express my appreciation for everybody who just blew right through and kept working. Good job. For those of you who were unable to access the course, don't worry about it. You can see the announcements that were made. Kind of funny that we put up announcements on a course you couldn't access to tell you that it was okay if you couldn't access the course, but I guess modern technology does have its limits. And as usual, if there's any questions about anything, please ask me, and I'll be more than happy to try to answer them. And I'm going to try to be a little bit more active with you this week. What you'll notice is what happens with me in discussion boards. If things seem to be going well, I tend to stay out of them. And you guys were managing it pretty well last week. At one point, I thought we were slipping off into fandom, and then I saw it got itself right back on track. So keep your economic focus on this weekend. This week, it's going to be a little harder because I said this is a very technical economics and legalities week. And then next week, we'll venture back into some little more fun stuff. Okay, so again, thank you very much, and you may hear from me during the week. Thanks again. Bye.